Skydiving is supposed to be safe. Most people jump, deploy their parachute, and land without a scratch. But for some, the most common jumps turned into deadly disasters. At terminal velocity, skydivers are rushing towards Earth like a speeding bullet. Some start spinning so fast that up and down no longer exist, while others realize mid-air that they forgot to wear their parachute. Here are some of the most horrific skydiving accidents in human history, and things only keep getting worse. This is a photo of Ivan Maguire, taken in 1988. Ivan was an experienced skydiver and videographer in North Carolina. He had thousands of jumps under his belt and regularly filmed other skydivers mid-air. But on April 5th, 1988, something went terribly wrong. That day, Maguire was filming a routine jump from 10,000 feet. Equipped with a heavy video camera mounted on his helmet, he was entirely focused on filming the dive. But in his excitement, he boarded the plane and got ready to jump, without realizing that he had made a deadly mistake. Maguire had filmed so many skydiving jumps that his muscle memory kicked in. The instructor and another skydiver exited the plane first. Then, Maguire followed, instinctively leaping into the open sky. But within seconds, he realized something was wrong. His helmet camera captured the moments as he desperately tried to grab for something that wasn't there. Mid-air, at terminal velocity, he realized that he forgot to wear his parachute. Air traffic controllers on the ground heard Maguire's panicked voice over his radio, screaming as he fell uncontrollably toward the ground. He had no backup, no second chance. After plummeting over 10,000 feet, he hit the ground at full speed, without having any chance to survive. The skydiving community was in shock by the bizarre nature of the accident. Maguire was so accustomed to skydiving that he simply forgot to put on his parachute. It was later revealed that he had been exhausted from previous jumps that day, and the distraction of filming with his helmet camera led to the fatal mistake. But while Maguire's mistake cost him his life, the next accident would bring death to more than 7 people. The 20th of August 2015 was a perfect day for skydiving. The sky was clear, and 2 fully loaded planes were climbing into position over Slovakia. Inside each aircraft, 17 skydivers sat shoulder to shoulder, gripping their harnesses in anticipation. The plan was simple. Both planes would fly in close distance and release the jumpers simultaneously for an advanced freefall formation. Everything was going according to plan. But then, disaster struck. Without any warning, the 2 planes suddenly crashed. One of the aircrafts was instantly torn in half. The skydivers inside had only seconds to react. Some were thrown out of the wreckage by the force of the impact, tumbling completely disoriented into the air. Others scrambled toward the open door, leaping out just before the plane went into a deadly spiral. The second plane was critically damaged, but still intact. Inside, skydivers fought against the violent turbulence, struggling to reach the exit. The aircraft was going down fast, and in this moment, the only rescue was to jump. One by one, skydivers threw themselves out while pulling their parachutes almost immediately. But not everyone made it out of the plane. Out of the 34 skydivers, 31 managed to escape in time. But 3 of them never found a way out. The 4 crew members were also trapped inside, while the plane slammed into the forest below. By the time rescue teams arrived, there was nothing left to save. 7 lives were gone in an instant. But while they died instantly, Michael Holmes proved that you can even survive a freefall from over 10,000 feet.
Okay. Good. Bye.
Michael Holmes had made thousands of jumps. As an experienced skydiver and instructor, he knew the dangers of the sport better than most. But on December 12, 2006, during what should have been a routine jump over New Zealand, something horrible was about to unfold. It started like any other jump. Holmes was part of a team performing high-altitude skydives over Lake Taupo, one of the most popular drop zones in the country. He jumped from 15,000 feet, flipping into position as he began his descent. The wind was rushing past, and the land was stretching out beneath him. Everything seemed perfect. But then, disaster struck. At 4,000 feet, Holmes reached for his pilot chute, the small parachute that deploys the main canopy. He pulled. Nothing happened. He yanked again, harder this time, but the main parachute refused to open. Holmes had faced malfunctions before, but he wasn't worried. He had a reserve parachute and pulled the emergency handle. But again, nothing happened. Now he knew that he was in serious trouble. Below him, the ground was rushing closer at over 120 miles per hour. His oxygen-starved brain scrambled for solutions, but there were none left. His helmet camera recorded his final words.
Good. Bye.
A few seconds later, he hit the ground at full speed. The force of the impact should have killed him instantly. But by an impossible stroke of luck, he crashed into a dense blackberry bush, its thick, tangled vines absorbing just enough of the impact to keep him alive. Rescue teams rushed to the scene, finding him with a punctured lung, a shattered ankle, and heavy internal injuries, but alive. Michael's survival was nothing short of a miracle, but for the next skydiver, there would be no lucky escape, because her parachute didn't just fail, it was sabotaged, and when she jumped from the plane that day, she had no idea someone wanted her dead. Skydiving is all about trust. You trust your instructors, your equipment, and your fellow jumpers. Els van Doren had made over 2,000 successful jumps. She loved the sport, the adrenaline, and the sense of freedom that came with every descent. But on November 18, 2006, someone betrayed that trust in the worst way possible. That morning, Els arrived at the Swartberg airfield in Belgium for what was supposed to be another thrilling jump. She boarded the Cessna Caravan alongside 3 other skydivers, including Els Klottemans, a woman she considered a close friend. At 13,000 feet, they leaped into the sky, forming a perfect aerial formation as they plummeted toward the earth. Helmet cameras captured Van Doren smiling, completely unaware that she was about to fall to her death. At 4,000 feet, it was time to deploy the parachutes. Van Doren reached for her pilot chute and pulled, but nothing happened. Panic set in as she frantically grabbed for her reserve parachute, yanking the handle with all her strength. But the reserve wouldn't deploy either. Above her, the other skydivers could only watch in horrified silence as Van Doren's body spun uncontrollably, plummeting toward the ground at terminal velocity. Her screams echoed through the air, growing fainter as she disappeared into the landscape below. Moments later, she was gone. She hit the ground in a garden of a family home in a small town of Belgium. Investigators, at first, suspected equipment failure, a tragic but rare malfunction. But when they inspected her parachute, they made a terrifying discovery. Both the main and reserve chutes had been deliberately sabotaged. The cords had been carefully cut, making it impossible for them to open. As detectives began questioning those closest to Van Doren, one name kept coming up: Els Klottemans. It turned out the 2 women were romantically involved with the same man, another skydiver, and Klottemans was obsessed with him. The night before the jump, Klottemans stayed at Van Doren's house. She had access to her gear and cut all the cords of the parachutes. The next day, Van Doren unknowingly jumped with a rigged parachute and died after hitting the ground at full speed. The case went to trial in 2010, and after a highly publicized courtroom battle, Klottemans was found guilty of murder and sentenced to 30 years in prison. This is a photo of José de Alencar Lima Jr. As an experienced instructor with over 9,000 jumps, he had trained countless students and performed some of the most dangerous aerial maneuvers imaginable. But in November 2024, a single mistake would cost him everything. That morning, Lima Jr. arrived at Pedra Bonita, a famous mountain launch point in Rio de Janeiro. But today, he wasn't skydiving. He was attempting something even riskier, called speed flying. Speed flying is a high-speed version of paragliding, where pilots use a small, high-performance parachute to glide down steep mountain slopes at extreme speeds. It requires split-second decision-making, perfect conditions, and an expert-level understanding of wind dynamics. But on this particular day, something went terribly wrong. He stood at the edge of the cliff, adjusting his gear, taking one last breath. Then, he ran forward and launched himself into the air. For a few seconds, everything seemed fine. His parachute partially deployed, and he began descending at high speed. But within moments, the fabric collapsed. His wing folded in on itself, and suddenly, Lima Jr. was free-falling uncontrollably. He tried desperately to regain control, pulling on his toggles, but it was too late. The ground was approaching fast. At 820 feet above the ground, he had no time to react. He hit the rocky terrain with full force, and the impact was so severe that he had absolutely no chance of survival. Horrified witnesses rushed to the scene, but there was nothing they could do. Authorities later examined the accident, and while the exact cause is still debated, experts believe a combination of turbulent winds and a critical miscalculation in deployment angle caused his parachute to collapse. It was another reminder that in extreme sports, even the smallest mistakes can decide between life and death.